I know who.
Shelley and Jay, we're gonna get started.
Changes? Sure, sorry.
No worries.
I didn't bring my gavel tonight.
Packed agenda tonight.
Yeah,
So
we've got a pretty
welcome,
busy agenda.
everyone. We'll get one item out of the way quickly since we do have a quorum, and that is, well, we don't need to vote on the approval. of the agenda. Oh, agenda minutes, okay.
We have to adopt the agenda. So is there
A second,
unanimity to adopt today's agenda?
all right.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, if you want to be recorded.
okay. And 8-0 to 1-0?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Howard.
Okay, so before we begin, we have just a couple housekeeping things. Not even really housekeeping, it's more important than that. Andrew, who's been our beloved co-chair of transportation for many years, and then again, for what, something like that. We will be transitioning due to the term limit policy as written by, I guess, the borough president's office or our board bylaw, our board bylaw. And as a result of that, we're very excited, as you all saw in the email, that Jami will be joining us officially in March, and we'll do a 3-person meeting in February. So Jami will be the new transportation co-chair. So welcome.
But Andrew will
And Andrew is going
remain
to,
as our
yes, Andrew will,
trusted
yes, Andrew will be staying
Member.
on.
I'll keep you posted on MTA.
And we'll have a special role, I think.
Advisory.
We're gonna be discussing it.
Special.
And also just, I think, even more formal than that in terms of guiding us through some of the congestion pricing topics. So we look forward
Just
to
starting.
rolling that out with you after Jami and I have had a chance to talk about it, and Andrew. But that will happen starting in March. And then for purposes of tonight's meeting, we do have one person who is joining us online, who requested a waiver, and that's Howard. So Howard, hope you feel better and welcome. I see our chair Beverly is also here, and I think we probably have members of the community as well, which Jessie has, as usual, is assisting us with. So thank you, Jessie, for all of your help. So with this in mind, we have a lot of people coming in just a couple minutes late, so bear with us if you are remote tonight. The first item on the agenda, we have devoted, the final thing, just we have noted in the agenda, and I circulated it earlier today, the time preferences / constraints for each item. We really are asking people to follow, those who are guiding each agenda item to follow those constraints, as we would like to be out of here at a decent hour tonight and allow for thorough discussion. So I guess with that in mind, the first item is item number 2, which is Ken's proposed resolution on
Left turns.
left turns.
Yep.
So over to you, Ken, and is your speaker here yet?
No, I don't know. He might be in the waiting room. waiting.
No, hi, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, okay, good.
Okay, well, all
Hi, Jeff.
right. Welcome, everyone.
All right.
Okay, we're starting. We've got agenda item.
More committee too.
Your seats.
So I'll just give a brief introduction. I mean, I hope everybody read the resolution, but it has to do with making left turns safer. Left turns are about the most dangerous thing that can happen on our streets for both pedestrians and cyclists. Left turning cars or pedestrians are twice as likely to be killed or seriously injured by a left turning car than a right turning car. And that's for a number of reasons that are outlined in the resolution. This resolution has to do with the third reason in the resolution that it's dangerous, which is that left turning cars often have to deal with traffic that is coming towards them as they are making the left. And so they're focusing on finding a gap between traffic that is oncoming and making that left. And often the pedestrians who are crossing parallel to where they were going before they made the left turn are an afterthought for them. And it's like all of a sudden, oh my God, you know, I forgot to look for a gap in the pedestrians, or they're gunning it and to get out of the way of an oncoming car, whatever. there's many, many cases in the city where people were killed and seriously injured because of this. This occurred to me to bring this up just, personally, because I often have to navigate the intersection of 97th Street and Central Park West on the west side, which I find really, really scary, particularly at night. Drivers are turning left against oncoming traffic. So I basically run, but I don't think a lot of people think to run, and I don't think you should have to run. What this resolution proposes is that the city create in at least every intersection on the Upper West Side what are called protected left turns, which means that it would be impossible for to have a situation where a pedestrian has a walk signal and can legally cross at the same time that a driver can legally make a left turn. So the driver would have to have a left turn arrow, or if they didn't have a left turn arrow, the walk signal would have to be off, and the pedestrian would not have the illusion of safety while they're crossing, because that's what happens. You have the illusion of safety, and all of a sudden there's a car bearing down on you. So it's to separate the two users. And this also affects cyclists, because now cyclists are allowed to proceed on the when there's a walk signal, even if there's a red light against them. If there's a walk signal, they can go. And so this would protect cyclists who are going through the intersection as well. We have an expert whose name is Jeff Smithline, and he is project manager of traffic engineering at, I guess what once was Sam Schwartz, but now it's something called Thailand. And
T-Y-Lin, yes, T-Y-Lin.
T-Y-Lin, okay. I assume it was Sam Schwartz got absorbed by them.
That's what happened.
But he's the vice president there. And he's going to provide some expert testimony, if you will, on this, and then could answer any questions in a much more informed way than I could. So is there
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So
hold on, Jeff. We have
yeah, go ahead. Of course.
Post the resolution on the screen.
I can't do it, but
Jessie,
I can go ask Jessie, but
Jessie can do it, I think.
Yeah.
I'll ask her about that too.
Just
Let's get started. Let's get started, and
Okay.
then but everyone did receive it, so we just again want to ask people to make sure they read them before arriving at the meeting too.
okay, Jeff.
Yeah, so Ken had reached out to our firm just to get, I think, just some feedback on it. And, so I reviewed it, and, we had a discussion. And, it's important to understand, well, so at the very basic level, eliminating left turn conflicts with pedestrians and crosswalks is obviously a safer thing to do than not doing that. But in order to implement this at intersection, I think the resolution kind of calls on DOT, to do this everywhere. And I think the everywhere can, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your focus is on the two-way opposing left turns, which is going to happen on your two-way east-west streets, within your district. So think 96th Street, 106th Street, et cetera. So, but in order to do this, essentially what he's asking for is a separate phase for the left turn and the walk signal. So you need a left turn lane, a striped left turn lane, in order to hold that vehicle, right? In order to hold left turners. You can't have what you have in some cases here, where the left lane is a shared lane where you can go through or left from that lane. Because if you were to put up a red arrow left turn, you'd have through vehicles in that lane too that would still want to go through. You're only telling the left turners to stop. So it only works where you have exclusive turn lanes, and you have that at some locations now, like 106 in Amsterdam in the eastbound direction, which is the only left turn you can make. You can't make the westbound left because it's a one-way street. you have a left turn lane. So I don't know what the phasing is there off offhand, but you could hold the left turners, but in order to do that, you're taking signal timing, or you're taking green time away from the opposing through movement. So, there are trade-offs with doing this, right? So this is, safety is a priority, with this proposal, and it would likely happen at the expense of, vehicle delay at the intersection. So again, it's a matter of trade-offs, as are most traffic improvements, most safety improvements. Usually it is at the expense of moving traffic. You're either slowing traffic down or you're providing more time for pedestrians to cross. But you also have intersections like 96th Street, let's say 96th Street and West End Ave, where you can make, you can make an eastbound left or a westbound left, because West End Ave's two-way, but you don't have striped left turn lanes there. So in order to implement this there, you would have to turn the left lane, which is currently basically a through lane that you can make left turns from, into an exclusive left turn lane, which means you're eliminating one of your through lanes. So again, there's trade-offs. That could actually back up traffic east and westbound really far, right? I mean, this stuff is usually studied. And so these are the things that DOT would consider when being asked to implement this at a specific location. If you don't have left turn lanes, I mean, the other option, rather than converting a through lane into a left turn lane, is you could actually get rid of on-street parking on that approach. If there is on-street parking, you can push the two through lanes, which is what you usually have, out to the curb where the parking lane is, and you could squeeze in a left turn lane. So you don't have to reduce the number of lanes on the approach, but you'd have to reduce the amount of on-street parking, which is a priority for other people. So it's always a balancing act with trade-offs. There could be some low-hanging fruit out there at some of these intersections where the infrastructure's there. If there's already a left turn phase, which I think most of your left turn lanes would already have a left turn phase, that means the signal equipment is already there, and it can accommodate it, where you don't have to add a left turn signal head, which not all intersections have. But so I can't personally recommend where it makes sense. This stuff would have to be studied. But the intent of it, which is to eliminate the conflicts between left turners and pedestrians that have the walk and have that expectation that a vehicle is going to yield to them. We all know that vehicles sometimes yield and they sometimes don't. And sometimes they kind of meant to, but they're so concerned with oncoming traffic and finding gaps in oncoming traffic, they finally find their gap, and they're sort of, hitting the gas to make the turn, and all of a sudden they see a pedestrian in the crosswalk that they didn't expect. So, we all kind of know what it's like to make those left turns with opposing traffic at a busy intersection. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or, get into more detail into some of this.
Is that an example? So I'm just on Broadway and 100th Street going east. I think they recently installed a left turn, an east turn. So that's similar what they'd have to do with these other locations, basically remove. So the example you gave at 96 in West End, if you made the left lane in east turn, you would have no through there. So you'd only have that one lane to go through, or to make a right going west towards the West Side Highway. And I don't think there's any parking right there on that corner, so you couldn't even remove the lane.
The eastbound approach at 96th Street, I'm just happy to look at an aerial. At West End Ave does have some on-street parking, so you could do that, but
Corner?
Coming from the north.
the area I'm looking at, coming from the west side, if you're on 96, there's two lanes plus a parking lane, it looks like.
I think if you're going south at 96, I don't believe there's a parking.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
No, south there isn't. I'm sorry, I was talking about east-west.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, got it. Okay, got it. Okay, yeah, I'm glad.
I mean, in a more extreme case, you could literally have a pedestrian-only phase for the entire intersection, And then you don't have to create the exclusive left turn lane, but that'll take a lot of green time away from traffic. So, there's a few ways to get at the solution. All of them in some form would probably affect traffic flow for whatever's not the left turn. But if you've experienced significant safety issues at some of these intersections, it could be worth, proposing that at the expense of traffic. Again, these are trade-offs that I know not everyone in this room is going to agree with, what the priority is. Some of us are drivers, some of us are parkers, some of us are walkers. Some of us are all three.
I think most people are walkers.
I mean, 96, I just know from running, sometimes I'm running south, that, you try to sprint across because all the cars are going and it's kind of chaos there, yeah.
So question. So on 86th and Columbus, southbound left, there is a turn lane now. And is that light a priority? Is that sort of an example of what we
Yes.
want? Okay, so that is,
Yeah, and there used to be a lot of people hit there, because I lived a block away from that
right.
for a long time.
So there's a turning lane, there's the bike lane that actually
Yeah.
does, right, the
Right.
turn will cross, but there is I think there's a bike light.
Yeah, there's a
traffic-
bike. Yeah,
and a
that's a
left
good
turn.
example of where a left turn only gets a green when there's no conflicts with bikes or pads.
So ideally,
Uh,
we're looking to replicate this
Mhm.
all around the neighborhood. Okay, got it. I just want to take
Yeah.
the example.
And it's easier to do it on the avenues because you don't have opposing traffic either, right? I mean, it's easier to make the left turn. I mean, that left turn, when you're on a one-way avenue, the left turn is very similar to a right turn. You're not dealing with opposing traffic, you're just dealing with conflicts in the crosswalk. And in this case, that conflict has been eliminated, assuming, pedestrians and cyclists actually stop at the corner. But, the signal timing should be eliminating the conflicts. But we
As
all
long
know
as-
that cyclists will sometimes go through.
As long as the avenue isn't Central Park West, West End Avenue, or Riverside Drive, which are two-way avenues.
That's right. So, this could be implemented there as well, and it would have a bigger benefit because the left turners are dealing with a lot more, distraction, right? You're looking at oncoming traffic first before you even start thinking about the crosswalk in many cases.
So this
Have we,
resolution.
Have we, prior to this resolution, have we asked DOT to look into this
We
matter
did, right?
and suggest?
Yeah, we had a resolution on left turns in March of 21, where I have written down the wording, but we just generally ask them to look at, to kind of prioritize what we were calling back then split phase, which was kind of a misnomer. It's actually, the term of art is protected left turns. So we asked them to strongly consider that. So, but sort of, I know nothing has changed in the last 4 years, and this is looking at a very specific case, the most dangerous left turn there is, and asking them, I think, in a stronger way to do something in these cases where a driver's dealing with. There's a really neat term that traffic engineers use, which is called driver workload. And drivers have a lot bigger workload when they have to deal with crossing both oncoming traffic and crossing a pedestrian crosswalk.
So does this conclude the presentation piece from,
Yeah,
okay,
Can we bring up the,
yeah, Jessie, I think you can hear us, but if you could scroll up a little bit for us, thank you so
So we see
much.
the-
I did not get this resolution.
Sorry, I believe it was attached in what we had sent.
It was a
I
link
apologize.
inside the email.
Yeah.
in the email.
Can I just ask a follow-up?
What email?
Sure, then we're gonna go around the table,
I don't know,
so.
I didn't send it, but
I
I thought
just
you,
had a follow-up
as a member
about.
of the committee,
I
you'd be on
got
it.
the latest.
Can I just ask a
Jade,
follow-up?
there's a link attached to both the agenda online as well as the calendar. And also in the board member workstation, this also resides there. So it's taken 3 places.
Time to remind everyone to use Drive, right, Jessie?
So it wasn't sent as an email.
It was sent as, there was
It was an attachment
Yeah.
with a link to it, but it was also in the drive.
And when you got the link for the meeting, an announcement that, you know, if you were going on Zoom, there would have been a link.
You remember, Jay, I sent it in November.
You did.
It was, and we talked about it. But
That was in November.
that was in November.
But anytime there was a resolution, there was a link when you clicked on proposed resolution. There is a link to
If you
that.
go to this, if you go to the website.
I believe so, and also if you go into Drive, there was going to be a proposed resolution. We're
But
doing
you
this to
didn't
avoid,
send everybody an email
no, and we won't,
with the,
we will not do
why
that.
not?
Because you're supposed to go into Drive to look up when there's a there will be a link, but we never circulate the
Okay.
agendas. I mean,
I would propose that we
Yeah.
We
have,
used to,
I would propose that we have a conversation about process
Yeah.
in March and move on with this conversation.
Jamie, that's fine, but I just want to be clear, I want everyone to have the information they need. Take it up later, but I think for right now, I believe that several committee members did receive
I'm looking right
some
at it.
form of notice prior to this meeting about,
Yeah, I got a link in the email, but also just as a practical matter, I have my little handy dandy iPad here, and I went to our website on the calendar, and on the agenda, you click on it, and the link to
yes,
this resolution is on the
This is-
calendar as well.
exactly.
Yes,
when was the emails?
So the goal of this, Jay, is to try to avoid you getting 5,000 emails from CB7 over the course of a month. Okay,
Never got 5,000.
well, but even, and then it,
Once a week got the committee.
So
okay,
I received an email at 3:24 today.
That was
from you
today.
two, yeah.
Yeah.
I did not.
well,
you were, okay, well, you were in the email thread. The only person who wasn't was Doug, because I asked.
Oh, yeah, then you sent it a few minutes later, yeah.
So in any event, something to think about, but again, you could always default, when you look at the agendas are always on the calendar on the CB7 website. When you see that agenda, if there is something that lists a proposed agenda item or a proposed resolution, it will always be in Google Drive. So you can go right there and look it up, or if you need it to
Well,
be,
like you said, we can have a discussion.
it's fine. I just want to
on
make
the
sure.
process, but I didn't get, and I just looked again at 3:24.
Okay,
I didn't get an email.
okay.
but speaking of this resolution that I have in front of me, hyperlinked to it, because Ken was so thorough, is the
Yes.
2020 resolution, am I right? That's
That's
the
right.
one you're referring
Oh,
to?
okay.
Yeah.
Because I now have a follow-up question to Andrew's question. So the 2021 resolution, which I remember, you had asked, we had asked DOT to look at 10 intersections, correct?
We wanted them to,
I remember
Start
a lot
with
of
the-
heated discussion about it.
we wanted them to start with the 10 quote unquote most dangerous intersections, left turn intersections, to do this split phase.
Right, and my only question is, and I fear I know the answer, what happened?
As far as we know, nothing happened. It didn't have a big impact.
Okay,
Nothing was done at those intersections.
that's my question.
May I, when you refer to split phase, which I know you said is sort of a misnomer now, but doesn't that refer to a delayed light for, this is not a dedicated turning lane, but that the pedestrian has a longer amount of time and the car, in other words, be a green light for the pedestrian to walk. And even the green light for the vehicular traffic is delayed. That's what a split phase is, but we're obviously asking for something better
Well,
than that.
we just know it's a difference in terms,
Yeah.
protected. It's essentially means
Oh,
the
protected
same
and
thing.
split, okay, good.
So I think I end up asking the dreaded process question, because if we did pass the resolution previously and we are roughly referring to the same thing, I think it is then a question of whether or not we need to pass a resolution again. And I know Mark was always of the opinion that once the board and the committee has spoken on a topic, that should be the end of it, and we should be following up with DOT separate and apart. I think it's also worth considering that there was a considerable amount of additional nuance that seemed to be in the 2021 resolution. The one that's before us now is appearing to call for protected turn phase signals at every intersection, but there were 5 separate resolves in the old 2021, starting with the 10 most then moving on to saying that we prefer that it be the norm rather than the exception, then moving on to say that if you couldn't use a split phase signal, it should be a flashing yellow arrow, and then asking for, stop on reds at Broadway Mall. So there seemed to be additional matters that the committee and the board had already considered and spoken on. And so I think it really comes down to, are we going to be revisiting matters that we've already spoken about categorically, or whether or not it should be that what we're really raising by this conversation is to say, it's imperative that we follow up with DOT and we get an answer to them and figure out what is it that they need from us to advance this conversation, or is it just they're not doing this regardless of whether or not we have a conversation with them offline or pass another resolution, just to make sure that we're using our resources effectively.
Is Colleen on this call? Do we know? I haven't seen the list of participants.
She's on, but she's not promoted. Do you want me to promote her? I'll see if she accepts.
Please.
Promoted her earlier.
Do we get the operative clause of this resolution,
Yes, we will.
which I still don't have on the screen? So I know what the
It'll be a
If you check
resolution,
your email now, you should have.
I'd rather see it on the screen. I should have got the email. this
You did
afternoon.
get it, Jay.
I just looked, I didn't get it.
Let's not argue. Colleen,
I,
is here.
Hey, I'm here. It's Colleen. How are you?
Colleen, how
Hi,
you
Colleen.
doing?
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So we're revisiting the issue of protected left-hand turns on various dangerous intersections, and we're wondering how DOT would like us to get this to you. Do you want us to come up with the worst intersections and ask for protected left-hand turns on those particular ones, or would DOT like to get us what you feel is the 5 or 10 worst, most dangerous left turn intersections where there have been accidents, and go from there? I'm just wondering how we should proceed with DOT.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable if we start off with a small number and let's say maybe 5 intersections. If the community board can give us that, that would be great. And then, we can work on towards looking at other intersections as well and see how that pans out.
So do we want to go back to the original resolution?
Do they want that informally or by way of resolution?
Do you want that do you want us to just get that to you via email or via phone, or do you need a resolution to get you those 5 intersections to start this process?
I think a letter is fine from the community board.
Okay.
Well, this is, if I can address the process of objection. This is kind of focusing in it was a very broad resolution, and Carey, you weren't around then, but there was a lot of sausage making in this resolution. I remember it very well, as particularly at full board. I personally don't see how, this board is on record as prioritizing safety over all things, but when it comes down to brass tacks, turns out that's not really the case. And other things have priority. And that's reflected in what you call the nuances there. And so what I was trying to do here was focus in on one particularly dangerous circumstance, which isn't addressed specifically in that resolution at all, which is circumstances where drivers have this increased workload, which are incredibly dangerous, and call DOT's attention to that, because that's the most dangerous thing on our streets right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Ken, do you have an idea of the 5 or 10 most dangerous intersections?
No, and I'm not really sure that's our job. I think DOT has that data. There is something called Crash Mapper.
There is.
Yeah.
I could go look at that, or anybody could go look at that. DOT could go look at that. But this resolution says that at every intersection, people can get killed at a low crash intersection, just as easily at a high crash intersection.
I guess we're trying to think about also what Colleen is saying will be most effective for actually getting something through with DOT.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds
And
like
look, it's Colleen again. And look, we can figure out, and we can look at the crash data analysis that we have as well to identify the top 5 in your CB district. And I think in moving forward, if I get a new letter from the board asking DOT to do that, we'll be more than happy to do so.
But Colleen, you understand, we're talking about the top 5 where drivers are making a left turn against.
Left turns. Yes,
I
if
guess
you can
I'm-
clarify that in your letter, that would be helpful.
Well, I prefer we clarified it in a resolution, but
On the resolution, whichever approach the board want to take.
I think for the community and for the board, we need to make a statement in the resolution at this point. The other one's ancient, okay, at this point,
Yeah, it
and
is.
it wasn't acted on. And a letter should be sent, because Colleen is working with us and is recommending that. But I think the resolution is essential. It'll make everyone aware. If we just send a letter, it'll be, among the few people who are here.
So are we, if we're going by what Shelley is saying, and we want to do both the resolution and a letter, do we want to go back to the resolution that Ken has put on the table for tonight? Tweak it if we need to, based on what you've been saying a little bit, and also what Colleen is saying about identifying, we trust the DOT to identify these 5 based on what the criteria she's outlined, but we want to get 5 so that we focus on those. Right? I mean, I think the concern, my personal concern about your resolution is just that it's like vague, saying like all these, intersections are important. And if DOT says, well, based on the data, these 5 are the ones we want to work on, I'll take their guidance if it leads to a faster improvement. Are you comfortable with that?
well, so I'd be comfortable with something like at the end of the decretal, saying, beginning with the top 5 crash the intersections with the worst crash history or something like
Okay.
that.
But you're saying, so you want them all
Yeah,
at some time, but prioritize based on the data.
right.
I just want to get clarity on if we're doing a letter and a resolution, what are we proposing to say in the letter? Because even though I realize that the old resolution is similar and there's overlap, this new resolution is a little different. So I don't think it would be appropriate to write a letter before a resolution is passed at the committee and then the full board. If we want to write a letter referencing the previous resolution, by all means, because the board has already spoke to that. So so it's really the question, when we say letter and a resolution, what do we want the letter to say at this point?
Or could we take the resolution and just attach, sort of just like in our email to them saying, this is what we want you to, we voted on this at a committee. We really want you to focus on it. It also conveys stuff we've been working on for the last 4 years.
And we can reference the previous resolution. I mean, even in the current resolution, we can certainly reference the previous resolution. I mean, we're already on record for it. You can note it.
Well,
Can I
this
jump in?
resolution.
So I do want to say, Ken, that I had my son, my husband and my child were hit on a left turn and sent to the hospital, and it was horrifying. They're fine now, but I am 100% about safety on this issue. So I just want to be as clear as I can be. But I agree with Elizabeth that we want to be effective. We want to do it in the way that is most effective. We have Colleen telling us here that the way to get it done is to send a letter.
No, she said or a resolution, didn't you, Colleen?
Correct, a resolution, a letter or a resolution, whichever the community board prefers.
Okay, well, it seems to me that if we have this is just my opinion, we have the resolution that we passed in 2021 and a resolution that we pass now. Without identified intersections, it starts to be very confusing. I would propose, and this is just me, that we have the resolution that we passed in 2021. We write a cogent letter. We identify some intersections. I agree with you, it's not really our job, but if you looked in the margins of what Alex and I wrote back in November, there was a volunteer effort, I don't know if it's still there, to go out and identify those intersections using the mapper or just our eyeballs and our feet. And then we could at least get started on identifying 5 to 10 dangerous intersections. And then if we feel there's not an appropriate response to the letter tagged to our original resolution, we can then pass the broader resolution, waving a red flag, look, nothing is being done to
Well,
our satisfaction.
I don't understand I don't think this situation should exist at any intersection. And I can't think of a good reason to prioritize anything else other than human life in these situations. So, I don't know why we can't have a resolution that says this situation should not exist on our streets in our district.
Well, I would
Full
simply
stop.
answer that by saying the perfect can't be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Well, but
We want to
you're,
get
I
some
would answer it since
movement
I can't
forward.
get recognized.
Go
No,
ahead, Jay.
We're doing our best. We're going around. I saw Andrew's hand
Go ahead.
first.
Go,
and then
Jay,
yours,
and go.
but Jay, if you'd like
I
to go.
defer.
I would, look, it's very clear, let's be realistic. We've gotten the message that passing a resolution or sending a letter asking for this process to be at every single intersection is a waste of time. We've already passed the
well,
resolution.
then we should just go.
Wait, but let me finish, all right? So let's spend our time, whether we do it in a resolution or do it in a letter, listening to the representative from DOT who is telling us politely, give us 5 intersections. Those are the ones we'll look at and see if we can do something. But,
Actually, I thought she said they were going to look at
Yes.
5.
well, so,
Either way.
They were gonna determine 5 and we would accept
well,
that.
she was asking us, I believe, for 5.
Well, she said she
Colleen,
would,
can you just clarify that?
Can you clarify?
Hey, we can look at providing you with 5 intersections. We can look at that, or the community board can send us 5 intersections. Whatever your preference is,
That's quick.
we'll work with the community board.
What's gonna get faster movement from DOT?
I think the faster movement would be to send us either a letter or a resolution requesting that DOT, provide, based on their analysis or data, provide the board, the top 5 intersections that are dangerous with left turn movements. And if the agency can, look carefully at those locations to see what safety measures can be implemented, something sort of that way.
Okay, and what sort of time frame? I mean, could we get the 5 identifiable things from DOT? Is that like weeks? Is it
You know what? It depends. I mean, as soon as I get the letter from the community board, I can work with our traffic planning division and find out what the time frame would be for a response back.
Okay, because we don't want to waste, I mean, not waste time, but
Yeah.
I think we have volunteers and people at the board that are at the ready to do this, but it won't be as scientific, I personally don't think, as great as we all are, as having DOT make that call for us.
Exactly. Usually the turnaround would be 90 to 30 days or so.
So if sort of at our March meeting, if we could hopefully have, before our March meeting, have those lanes identified, and in the meantime, or those 5 intersections identified?
I can try to do that before the March meeting, yes.
Is that?
yes, so let me
I
propose
want to get
that,
Howard's hand.
Yeah.
but just let me propose that we, at the end of this resolution, we would say something like, we ask DOT to identify the 5 most dangerous such intersections and let us know what they are.
Isn't that basically what we did in 4 years?
Well,
ago?
we hadn't focused it in on this really most dangerous condition.
I want to, I guess Andrew,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
next. And then
I spoke already, so let Howard and then I'll. go.
Howard,
Oh, I just want to say, I think this is overly complicated. Maybe it's the distance I have from the meeting that's allowing me to see this. I think a resolution putting our committee on record as noting that this is an unsafe condition is a good thing. And then a letter specifying the 5 intersections to get it implemented ASAP. So I think they dovetail with each other. They serve 2 different purposes. And I think both purposes are very important, and they would both lead to our being on record in favor of safety and having a letter that makes the most expeditious improvement in the situation. So I don't see them as inconsistent. I see them as working together, and I'm in favor of both.
Okay, and just to be clear, Howard, the letter, we will not know the 5. I mean, you want us as a community board to identify the 5 intersections, or do you want DOT to?
I don't have a strong opinion either way. I just see them as having 2 different purposes. The resolution should put us on record as being in favor of safety at every one of these intersections, and the letter should get into the logistics, whether we defer to the DOT to pick the 5 or we pick the 5. I'm indifferent. You know, as I always say, we pay high taxes for the experts that the city employs. I would just as soon see them pick the 5. I don't have any trouble if someone on the committee had the initiative to pick the 5, but I think that's the purpose of the letter, to provide Colleen with the 5 specific instances which they should get started on as soon as possible, and the resolution putting us on record as being always in favor of safety at these kinds of intersections.
Okay, thanks, Howard. Andrew.
I know this is just all very confusing to me.
Yeah.
The fact is, we passed a resolution through the board after much debate and discussion, and it hasn't been acted on, and now it's 2025. We should go back and say, here's our resolution. Why have you not acted? That's what our letter, in my
That's what our
opinion, should
letter
be.
Well,
Why
this
haven't you done-
resolution sort of says.
Well, I know,
that.
let me, because I'm going to answer your point. So that would be number 1. And then number 2, I think what Ken put forth is not what we're discussing here. And correct me if you're wrong. I think what Ken's saying is there should be a fundamental part of city planning and our Upper West Side district that anywhere this situation occurs, it should not occur anymore. And that is a statement of, you know, his position could be our position as a board if we voted on it. But now getting into nuance and going back and forth, we're gonna do a letter and another resolution to get them to get back to us with 5 different locations. Then we're gonna look at it, and then people are gonna be like, well, this location's okay, but that one, the traffic's gonna be backed up. I just think we need to have a line in the sand. If we as a board believe that there should not be this situation occurring, then we should have a resolution like Ken has saying it should not be occurring. And if we wanna focus on specific, you know, things that we've debated in the past, we should try to at least get a response to our initial resolution, then do something else.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want the new letter, what we're saying now, or do we, and are we doing? Yeah, I think it's a letter saying, we did this resolution in 2021. We would like we respond to it. You know,
Right.
and that's what it
I
should be.
think-
And then the
I think-
second thing should be Ken's, we should vote on just straight up or down saying, do we believe that the policy should be that there are no, you know, traffic going while pedestrians?
So if we're in agreement on a letter to start out with, to your point, including 5 intersections or the 5 places, they may be different from 2021 to now based on the data that DOT
Mhm.
looks at, right? So are we comfortable attaching that and saying, or whatever 5 areas you deem as being the most important right now?
Just from a policy, a procedural perspective, like, we did a resolution, so like, is this, if we say, look at a resolution with these new 5 intersections, like, is that kind of modifying?
We're not telling them which 5, we're asking DOT to make
Right,
sure.
them to identify the 5.
Them to
That's-
make sure
That's
that
fine,
they're-
yeah, say,
Okay.
here's our resolution,
So-
tell us the
So
5.
there's that piece, I mean, I think we're sort of getting there. And then there's the broader policy piece, right, of this is unsafe for all intersections, and we as a community board want safety, and we don't want any of the, just a vaguer, but yet something that shows that we believe.
Ken's resolution is not vague that it's a safety, but Ken's resolution specifically says he wants this procedure at every
Yeah.
single intersection. Am I correct?
Where there's that condition.
Well,
Correct,
where
yeah.
there's a left, whatever
Okay, well,
the
if that's,
physics are.
if
So
that's the
let's bring it
resolution-
up, let's vote on it. If it brings it, then you can decide whether you want to send another letter.
Ken, is there
with
anything
4
else you'd
years
like
ago
to,
resolution.
you'd like to?
You want to
okay.
propose it?
We have a
propose it.
resolution that's on the table right
Yeah,
now.
and I
right?
just have a question about it.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, to quote the old why is this resolution different than all other resolutions? My question is, but I really, well, that's what I do want to know. I really would like to actually do like an overlay, like seriously, the resolution on the table, how does it differ from the original one? And are we being repetitive? And I suspect we're not, because there's some more specific stuff. I think, if I may interpret, you're saying that you are calling for it wherever this condition exists, and as sort of a friendly amendment per our discussion and per Colleen's note, you would stipulate to, let's start with the first 5, but really what we would be saying in this resolution is, but we do want all of them. The last question I have, and then I'll shut up. Do we have the facts? Do we know in our district, 59th to 110th Central Park to the river, how many of these problematic intersections exist? Because we're talking about the top 5. Are there 20? Are there 50? Do we know how many we have?
I think that's a question, it's Colleen.
Do we happen to know?
I actually asked that, and maybe it was Jeff, somebody told me they didn't think DOT had that information, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, Colleen's on the line.
Yeah.
So, Colleen, do you have that information?
Jeff might.
Or
I would have to confirm that, but I'm not aware of it. I would have to confirm with my colleagues.
Okay, I'm just asking quantifiably, just, are we asking for 10% of all the intersections, 50%? I'm just curious to know, how
The
many there are.
resolution asks for all.
Yes, and I want to know what all
Let's
is.
vote on the
My
resolution.
rough guess,
If Ken wants to
Okay.
propose his
my rough guess
resolution,
would be about
he's
30%.
entitled to
Okay,
do it.
if we could just
It's on the
get, we
floor.
can get
30% of all
everybody,
the
Folks, can we
intersections.
all
yes.
listen to each
Okay.
other?
Actually, less.
This isn't making things go more smoothly when there's crosstalk, so let's try to keep it focused, okay? There's a resolution, your resolution, which is on the table right now, as is with no changes. Is there anything that, if somebody wants to call it up, we can call a question and vote on Ken's.
Has to be
resolution.
seconded first.
I know it has to be seconded, but if there's anything friendly, anything that Ken, you would be willing to get based on this conversation that might make it more comfortable to certain people, anything you'd like to add, otherwise, if
Do you
there's a
want to
second,
add
we'll go.
something, for instance, like while CB7 will be sending DOT a letter explaining our hope that they will identify the 5 or 10 worst intersections for us. We worry about every intersection where this condition exists, and, words to that effect. You want to?
He said he was going to do it, right?
Yeah, I had something, we asked DOT to identify the top 5 most dangerous intersections with this condition.
To start
and
with
as
those.
a start, or something like that.
Okay, so, Carey.
So I would just ask Ken that we consider the strategy that Jami had proposed earlier. And this is putting my day job on, where it's litigation all day and I spend my time fighting with people and thinking about how to get the most leverage in a situation. If we're hearing from DOT, send us a letter. We'll come up with the 5 most dangerous intersections, 30 to 90-day response. It sounds like what the most effective thing for us to do is take them up on that offer immediately, send them the letter, ask them for the 5 intersections. And then what we can do 30 to 90 days from now, especially since this was originally proposed in October, at that point, we've retained our leverage and we can write a much stronger resolution. Instead of just saying, hey, we passed this resolution, DOT hasn't done anything. Instead, what we can say is, hey, we passed this resolution. We raised it with DOT. They said, send us a letter. We did. They said it would take this long. Nothing's happened. Now we're especially concerned, and we reiterate. It's a much stronger resolution for all of us to get behind at that point. If all we do now is pass the resolution, we've given up our leverage, and we're going to be here in 2030 saying, why didn't they do anything with the 2025 resolution? So I would just ask that we wait a little bit longer, try to let them, take them up on their offer to respond to the letter, and then see what happens.
Here, here.
Alex, you're gonna have the final word. And then
Yeah,
Ken
I
is
just
your
want to
decision.
say, I actually kind of agree with Carey on this one. Remember we did the daylighting resolution about over 6 months ago. DOT said, we'll be very quick. We'll get 5 done within 30 days. Of course, it's been 6 months. We have 0. And so we always say these great things. They never do anything, right? I like Carey's idea because it's like, it's such a small bar for them to respond to, right? They don't have to put any asphalt anywhere. It's like go on a map and be like, here's 5 intersections, it's done, right? And when, personally, a little pessimistic, when that doesn't happen, I think to Carey's point, our leverage is very strong, where we can be like, we asked it just for 5, you didn't even respond. Right, like, I think that's stronger, and we can then do the
Well,
resolution.
shouldn't our leverage be the fact that the board passed a resolution? in
No, I just think-
2021?
I think-
I mean, this is like,
Yeah,
it's like, it's
yeah,
like,
we-
it's like,
we
it's
got a
like,
lot of
I'm
leverage
sorry,
out
you
of
didn't listen to me the first time, maybe
Right.
listen to me now,
But I think
and if you
Carey's-
don't listen to me the
Carey's
second
point
time,
is-
I'm gonna come back the
That's
third
exactly
time even
So I think
stronger.
Carey's point is
Yeah, I know.
Threaten them with another letter.
the bar is so small, so I like,
Can you finish?
yeah, I like Carey's, I would just say I like Carey's idea.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Ken, you have the
okay, well-
final word and we have our.
Well, if we're gonna do that, it sounds like maybe the committee's
Yeah,
trending that way. I wanna have a deadline, like, I don't wanna like be sitting here in September and saying, oh, you know, we didn't get the
We already
list, you
said
know.
March.
I mean,
Yeah.
So,
Colleen said
so
March.
March, you know, if we
30 to
if
90
we
days.
don't have
60
information
right
on
now.
the, and, you know, it's all about leverage, because this resolution, as far as I'm concerned, is gonna have the same wording. This should not exist anywhere in the city unless we want people to be killed, right, every day, which is
Howard, your
what's
hands
happening.
up, but we're gonna try to come to conclusion here on this, what we do.
Okay, I'll just, in 15 seconds, I just want to reiterate my point that I don't see them as inconsistent. We can have a resolution generally be in favor of safety at all these kinds of intersections and still send that letter. So they're not inconsistent.
Call the question.
Are we calling the question on Ken's resolution as it stands?
Well, is
Well-
it calling the question on the resolution, or is it an agreement to table
We
until?
Well, I
still
think
don't,
there is an
we still don't have a second on the.
I
Right,
second.
and we
So
don't-
we keep,
Oh, I
Sorry,
second, I
Jay is
second.
correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
now we
There we go.
can vote.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Ken, are you still putting your resolution on?
Yeah, sure.
this
Okay,
is
so
a vote on
he made
Ken's
a resolution in
resolution,
second.
and it has been seconded.
Wait, I thought you just sort.
With the new wording, Ken?
With the
or
new wording?
existing
With the new
resolution?
wording.
What's the new wording?
It
About
just
the,
sounded like everybody. just
about the
agreed
5.
that-
Yeah,
We're
but-
prioritizing 5, but calling for all of them.
but not waiting
Right.
until March for, you know.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Oh, sorry.
You just said you wanted to favor.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
I the problem.
Vote your
So I'm
heart.
saying,
Vote
I'm in
your heart.
favor of the
Yeah,
resolution.
let's not comment on the vote.
The problem is if we vote no.
He can vote any way he wants.
If we vote no, we're
He
not.
can vote twice
If we vote, I say, if we vote
Come on, folks, we
no,
gotta do this.
if we
Yeah.
vote no, we're not gonna bring it up again in 30
So you
days.
voted, elect, not,
Okay, so we
all
have,
those opposed.
wait, just start, just again, those in favor.
What was the vote? I'm in
Five.
favor.
Is your hand up?
In favor of Ken's resolution.
2, 3, 4.
Five.
And Howard has a waiver, right?
He does.
Says okay.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
So it's 5.
Those against.
4.
Those abstaining. 2. Nobody for cause. So 5 to 4 to 2 to 0.
It fails.
It does not pass.
What about the public? What about the?
So now we're gonna discuss, is everyone in agreement? This is not a resolution, but writing the letter as we described before. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
What's the letter gonna
Oh,
say?
not
no.
me, sorry. You're
Oh,
a four.
Favor.
Oh, okay.
What's the letter gonna say, Elizabeth?
So the
Can
letter,
I make a suggestion that if you're gonna send a letter, that you guys draft the letter, circulate it to the committee,
sure,
take any suggestions.
everyone remembers what we talked about. today,
Right,
so.
I think, I have full confidence that the
Okay.
co-chairs
And I
can
think the
do
one
it,
thing,
or the
Colleen,
3,
we just
the
want to make sure.
tri-chairs
Yeah, and Colleen, I
should
think you,
draft it.
Colleen, can you still hear us? You can still speak, right?
I'm here.
Yeah, just to make sure, our date that we've set is March, the March committee meeting, which is 2 months from now, for a response from DOT.
Okay.
And then are we bringing this back?
We're gonna draft this letter sooner rather than later. We're gonna confer with you and
We can send it this
and
month.
us.
So,
And,
so,
and then
so,
when we agree on the letter, we'll send it to the committee, we'll get the committee's feeling, and then it goes to DOT.
so just because my resolution failed, I could bring it back in March? With,
Bring it back
You
in.
have a right to bring it back from now till doomsday.
And in
Well,
March,
Yeah, we-
in March, it'll have some extra oomph.
Yes,
Okay,
I think
All right.
that's what we're thinking about.
Okay.
Doug, unless it's really important.
Yeah, no, I have a process issue with this. So I want to read the old resolution. If we're writing a letter, which is an action of the committee, and we're bypassing full board, I want to make sure that are we speaking for the entire board with this letter? The only way I feel really comfortable doing that is if we're reiterating a resolution that's already been passed.
Well,
But if
we are gonna do that.
right, because we do have the ability to have full board. I mean, this is
The only thing
I'm-
that's really different is that we are just confirming with Colleen that the 5 intersections that she's identified either correspond or don't correspond, and we defer to which I think anyone who voted back in 2021 would probably want to make sure that it's still accurate. So I don't think that should be an issue for anyone on the board.
So the letter is just asking.
Yeah, we're just asking to list the most dangerous intersections. I have no problem with that. So just a
Okay.
simple request.
Okay.
But if we are also saying in that letter, despite the fact that the resolution just failed, that we want, even though I voted for it, but we want all of the intersections, that can't say that in a letter because it's not
We're
that's
not
the
saying
full
that.
board.
We're not
hasn't-
gonna say.
We're not saying that letter.
Well, it can't be, it cannot be in that letter.
We're not
They
saying
just
it's
said
a
it's
letter.
not gonna be.
Okay, all right,
How many
fine.
times
Okay.
can they say it?
That's not what we're
Okay.
discussing.
Doug, if we identify, or if we ask DOT and they identified the 5 most dangerous intersections where this condition that Ken has in his resolution exists, and they act on those, and those actions are successful, it's a no-brainer that they will want to do it elsewhere, I'm guessing.
Yes, okay.
okay.
So I think this is bringing this item to a close. Thanks to
Mhm.
everyone for the lively conversation.
thank,
And we
thank,
are now-
thank
we
you,
have-
Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Thank
very
you.
much for
Yes, thank
joining
you,
us.
Jeff.
Thank
So
you, Jeff.
we
Happy to
now
help.
We have a guest speaker or a speaker to come about our next item, which is.
Yes, this is about 120 West 76th Street. There's a synagogue there, and there's been a recent change to the signage. And Rabbi, would you like to
Yeah, and this came to us from the Borough President's office. just
pull up a
about
chair
ago.
and come right over here?
Thank you. My name is Daniel Sherman. I'm the rabbi of 120 at West Side Institutional Synagogue at 120 West 76th.
I'm sorry, what was the name?
West Side Institutional Synagogue at 120 West 76th Street. And thank you all for your time. So very quickly, I'll try to be as brief as possible. Seeing the agenda here, that on December 19th, I was walking by the building and I noticed that the DOT had moved a no parking sign that essentially prior from the beginning of my tenure at the synagogue about 10 years ago, essentially the entire length of the building was marked as a no parking zone. And therefore rarely were any cars that were parked there. And if they were really.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Rabbi, but about how many feet was that no parking zone?
I believe, I didn't measure it, but I believe if I'm.
How many
estimating,
vehicles would?
I would say this probably took about the space of 3 vehicles, between 2 to 3 vehicles.
60 feet.
I believe, I did not measure it, so I want to be quite honest about that.
54 to 60 feet, yeah.
And so we had lost those 16 feet after my research between Gail Brewer's office and the borough president and the mayor. Everyone had really been helpful just to try to figure out what had happened, because we had not heard from DOT that no one ever contacted us that this would be happening. What I found out afterwards is that the sign, that where it is currently now, in full disclosure, is where it was meant to be. Before my time in the synagogue, someone said they think it was about 2010 or so. Somehow the sign got moved around by somebody. And now we're trying, in the eyes of the synagogue, to avert a wrong. The reason why this is a very big deal for us is, first, we have JASA, which is a senior club. We've had a difficult time with space, let's say for paramedics or ambulances. Last week, we happened to have had a paramedic who needed to use the building. Thank God it was not for a life-saving procedure, but they were going around the block multiple times. Parking on 76th Street happens to be difficult because of the school as well. Some days it's even more difficult because of the bazaar that happens, and therefore there's always trucks. We also have a school, the Aliyah school as well. Their school buses have had a hard time now using that area that previously was designated for them, given the fact that now there's just random cars that are parked there now that it's under the regular rubric of alternate side parking. So between the ambulances, the paramedics, and also security issue now, because it happens to be the area that was picked, that DOT had moved the sign, is right in front of the doors that we use now. And it used to be in the past We would often have a police car that would stop by or our own security guards, let's say, would park their own cars there just to isolate who and what is using our area. And now it's open to the public and something that has been bothersome to individuals within the community as well.
So just one day, the signs moved.
If I recall correctly, it was Thursday, December 19th. So I asked the guy who was doing it, and I felt bad. Like, he didn't do it. He was just doing his job. So I said, "What happened?" And he's like, "I don't know. They told me to move the sign, so I moved the sign." And then we contacted the Brewer's office, the borough. All parts of government was successful in at least trying to investigate what the
And
school
Gail Brewer's
was.
office contacted DOT at that time?
Yes. So and that's where we found the back history. The synagogue had many histories of waxing and waning. So in 2005, 2010, when the sign must have been moved the first time, it was a low point in the synagogue. Hopefully, we're not at the highest point, but we're trending in the right direction. They have about 160 families or so in one, and then 80 in another. So between the two synagogues that have come together, we're about 250, 270 in total. And then just as a third point, and far less significant than the first two, but important from just an operations perspective, we have a lot of events in our synagogue. And the trucks are now stuck blocking 76th Street because there's nowhere to park in front of the Lancaster building.
Oh.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I saw.
I don't know the process.
That's fine. I saw Jay's hand
I
first.
just had a quick question. I don't want to be confused. When you say move, do you mean remove completely or just?
No, the sign was moved X amount of feet from where it used to be to shrink the
So,
no
okay,
parking
all
zone.
right, so approximately how much?
I believe
50%?
I believe about 15 feet is where I would give it.
You lost about 50?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Hi, two early questions. How many days a week does senior center meet there?
They are there Monday through Friday every day, and very often they have what's called a JASA Sunday as well, when they would use the
Okay,
Sundays.
I know it's very heavily used.
Yes,
And the school that's in the building, how many days?
they're there Monday through Friday
Friday?
every day.
And on the senior days, are accessorized vehicles usually pulling up to the curb?
Yes, all the time.
All the time.
All the time. I mean, in general, most of the JASA population is using some form of vehicle, whether it's a yellow cab or accessorized. That's been an issue.
Whatever the size of the space, the space isn't used for parking, is it by staff or anything? Is it left open so that it churns over for access?
So we do have, a member of, not a member of the staff, which is really 2 or 3 of us between the school and the synagogue who drive, are allowed to park there, but the policy is very clear that our office must have your number immediately. So, and the key has to be left with the synagogue office. So if we would run into any of these issues, then we would be the ones to remove that vehicle.
So how many vehicles are parked there on a normal day?
About 2 or 3 max, but there's also, just remember that I don't know the exact, I don't know if this is legal or not, but a lot of, let's say, handicap parking spots and other spots that are reused, or sometimes the teachers from the public school across the street will often park their cars there as well, which we don't necessarily like, but we don't necessarily have control. Someone just parks, or someone parks illegally. I mean, there's people who will stay there for a week and mount up on yellow tickets.
What is the exact wording of the no parking sign?
No parking, and
With an arrow or
with 2 hours on
2 arrows?
Hey, so it's Colleen. If I can chime in a little bit. Hello, Rabbi. The issue here is that we were doing an inspection for our smart curbs, and we noticed that the existing no parking anytime regulation did not match the signing records that we have. And I think what happened is that the sidewalk was replaced a few years back, and the sign and the support for it did not align with what currently is out there. So the reason why we asked the institution to come before the community board is that we don't have any objections with allowing the space that they're currently asking for, but we would love to have the community board support in granting us the okay to do so.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Colleen.
That makes it
All right.
easy.
Any questions about sort of a resolution to approve what DOT is recommending we do?
Call the question.
Okay, excellent. All those in favor?
Okay.
11.
Howard, you have your, Howard's affirmative? Yep.
11 to oppose, no. 0. Non-committee? 1. No other committee, non-committee members on the Zoom, right?
I think the committees.
Okay, great. Okay,
Thank you
so.
so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
But,
Really
it
appreciate it.
returns back to the way it was.
Amen. Thank you very much, really, for everything. Thank you so much.
We'll bring this up
Thank-
at,
This will be going to the full board on the first Tuesday in February.
And thank you, Community Board 7. The institution, has been really responsive, and to be honest with you, we've never had complaints about them, so we're glad to do this.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you very
welcome.
much. All right.
Mazel tov.
So next up, and Mr. Rigie, we're probably gonna ask
It
first
should
of
all
your
be
input
that
on this,
easy.
unless it was something that you, this, the dining.
Yeah, we have been doing the outdoor dining with BCI committee every month, whether it was a sidewalk or an in-street. And this came to us via whom, Elizabeth, exactly?
I guess Jessie, I don't know if Jessie's back yet. It just landed on our agenda to discuss
Oh,
how we're gonna.
Is
communicate
BCI taking
between-
this up as well, or?
I don't know, but I think it would be worth just, for this committee to take 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes. I don't know how many of you, if I could ask, how many of you actually go to the DOT meetings? Or sorry, the BCI meetings, which are
I've been
typically the
going to
night
them.
after this one?
well, I'm on the committee, so
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess there's been maybe some concerns raised about the communication process between DOT and community boards when it comes to the dining out stuff. I don't know if this is, and Colleen, I don't know again if this is something you are aware of, but it showed up on our agenda and if we don't have anything to discuss, we're not going to.
Well, there have been some instances, and Doug, and where it wasn't clear if something met the conditions and we could not get an answer in a reasonable amount of time from DOT to put it into the resolution. So, I mean, I'm sure there's thousands of applications before DOT now, with the new rules, with no winter outdoor in-street dining, and there's going to be, because BCI couldn't meet this past month because there was no quorum, there's probably going to be maybe 100 applicants for the next meeting. I mean, it's going to be quite something. So I guess the idea is to get better communication between, if a community board has an issue and wants an answer from DOT, whether that can be done in a more timely fashion than is currently being done, so that we can pass things in a timely manner and get it to the full board and get it to DOT.
And you should write a letter.
Nah.
And I just want to confirm again that Colleen is still here with us.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I'm sure you hear this from other boards
Yeah.
too, Colleen.
I think based
I hear a mouthful, but I love CB7.
We love you too.
I think the problem with all the meetings is that, the outdoor dining, both the sidewalk cafes and the roadway cafes are very technical. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of different rules and then different considerations based on where they're located. And I bring it up and I may feel always like here, I just think it's impossible for a community board for, us to understand all this stuff in real time. So when we look at the application and we start having these discussions, everybody's like, well, wait, what's this rule or what's that rule? And then like the people who kind of know it try to offer it, but like, we're not the lawyers, we're not like the text.
Is there enough clearance here for
Well, and
for
like,
wait
I don't think
staff
so.
and things
So
of that
what
nature?
I've been saying is, I think that as a community board, and I know, people have different opinions about it, but we have to rely on the agency that employs the experts to do the proper review of all of this stuff. It would be like if some technical issue about, the subway, came in front of us and like all of this, and we were trying to like on the spot explain and debate, wait, is this permitted or is that permitted, like, at the site, different sections of
I
the
might know
code.
the answer.
Yeah,
You
you
bet.
probably
Yeah.
would.
I have an answer to that. We should assign all of the applications to our new technical director. And ask him to make a
I would be
report,
happy to do that.
make a report on each one.
That would be a
At
great
the meeting.
presentation.
So what I
Sounds
think is
great.
what we should
Right.
focus on, and I know in the committee meetings, we had discussions about like procedure, is that, you know, if individual members of the board have a specific concern with a sidewalk cafe or a roadway cafe, they bring it up and we discuss it. If a member of the public has a specific issue, we hear them, we discuss it, and that's represented, but I think it's to a degree, I don't wanna say a waste of time, but I think it can create more problems, us trying to guess, like, is this distance right in this neighborhood? Is that right? Like,
Was enough clearance allowed
how
here
are we
or
gonna
there?
know? Are we then gonna go out and measure everything on our own? Like, and then it becomes really unfair because we pick one application for whatever reason it is to get into all these technical aspects. And someone could say something wrong and we vote on that and we approve someone or deny someone based on incorrect information. We should just, you know,
We assume that what comes to us is
that they've done the
voted,
review.
they've done the
They've
review,
reviewed
and
the-
then we start from the standpoint of yes, and unless there is a no, either on the committee
Well,
or a no
that's a
in the
good
public.
point you just raised. So let's ask Colleen. Colleen, by the time a community board gets an application for in-street dining hypothetically, has DOT looked at everything on there and okayed it?
Well, we've reviewed everything that they have provided us, all of the information that we've asked them to provide, we review all of that. And the community board is the final step, the final, the final step is going to the community board. So
Sure, no,
yes,
I-
we reviewed everything that they give us, yes.
And so by the time if they submitted something to you, an applicant, and it was something in there was not enough clearance in one area or another area, you would have told them that and you would have called it back and it wouldn't have come to us yet, correct?
Yeah, we would have told them that, yes, correct.
So we can assume,
That it's.
but when
Once
it
it
comes to
comes
us,
to
you have
it's-
okayed everything on there.
But
You can assume that, all of the pertinent information that we've asked them to provide, they've provided that. And the next step is to send them to the community board with that, we're satisfied with the information that they provided us.
But they're satisfied.
So
with
the
it.
only-
Well,
the only-
but
the only
that's
thing-
not, the question is not whether
Hang
they
on, hang
supply the information. The question is whether DOT has determined that they're in conformity with the requirements.
Right.
Yes or no, is that been done before it comes?
I
Before
think
the
what we're worried
community
about,
board?
Colleen, is that we may be getting some applications where that conformity has not been met. And then we're stuck.
We have,
Yeah. Well, I
We
think
haven't-
this is the opportunity of the board to mention that to the applicants.
So here's- I'd like
Because,
to
I mean,
respond.
yeah, I think this is the time for the community board to raise this with all of those applicants
So
who
Raise
did not
what?
conform under the old program.
may I? Elizabeth?
Yes.
Andrew? Okay,
Right?
so first of all, we have, to Colleen's point, I agree, it would be great to raise it to the applicant. The problem is they're not required to come here. And we have run into situations where we had a question that if we had the applicant here, we could have easily resolved it. And so it forced us to say no to the application triggering a hearing when it could have been resolved, but they're not required to be here. That's number one. And obviously we have different timing between sidewalk cafe and roadway, right? So which by the way, and we've also identified errors, absolute clear errors, not even to interpretation. There were hours of operation that were clear, that were, there were some mistakes. Now, obviously, when we're responding to that, we can, opine, clearly on that. But so, in fact, the last meeting that was canceled, I don't remember all the agenda items, but I think we lost the opportunity to opine on those because of the timeline, and they automatically are
That
waived.
meeting apparently.
What's that?
There was no quorum, and I asked what
No,
happened.
no, we didn't have a quorum and we didn't have a meeting, but what I'm saying is because of that, and because of the timeline, with at least some of those applications, I think we've lost our opportunity to, opine on it.
I'm not sure how much, frankly, that aspect matters. I mean, even theoretically, if, you know, we get an application, there's an error on it, we approve it, DOT then somehow issues the license. If they're in violation, they're still in violation of the law and in violation of the code. So it comes down to like an enforcement issue. So again, I don't know if it's a good way for us to spend our time getting into this. If we look at an application and, you know, you wanted to say, you know, I want them to agree to earlier operating hours, or I want them, even though the law says, you know, this application says they can have this much space, I want them to agree to less space. I mean, those are things I think that you could propose.
We did
but-
adjust some of the operating
Yeah.
hours on some of the
You know,
applicants, I
So,
remember.
so I think those are things that you could propose and we could debate. But to start getting into, well, is this a 10-foot clearance or a 12-foot clearance? Is that tree bed, you know, is it, you know, it just.
I think what
never-
we're asking is for just to have make sure DOT is doing a thorough check to make sure that those.
Before it comes to us.
So maybe just say, you know, in the resolution, if this, you know, as presumably this, you know, conforms with all, you know, DOT and City of New York, you know,
Yeah.
rules and regulations,
That's a
we
good
approve
We
it.
approve,
The
So then,
resolutions when you approve them.
yeah.
That's
You know, that
a
would say,
disclaimer.
you know, it's
That's a good
condition,
idea.
you know.
It
Right.
implies an assumption that DOT
Yeah.
has reviewed it, that it
Yeah.
conforms
Yeah.
with the physical requirements.
Yeah.
And I agree with,
Unless there's a
I agree with
major.
And
Andrew,
I,
if there's a community issue, whether it's noise or the extent, and we're asking for something outside the normal
Yeah.
requirements, then we can.
yeah, and I mean, even like if I don't know if we'd have to approve like the changes of the lights, maybe not the best example, but you know, like we're approving the concept, or we're approving them doing, we're not like approving that they do it in accordance with all the
Right.
city and state laws. We're presuming it's a government agency approving and doing something, that they're gonna do it conforming with the laws.
I'm assuming that the PCI committee will agree to what we're.
I'm assuming
sort of
that too.
talking about. I don't wanna.
We got a couple
they're not
numbers
either.
Yeah,
Just
I think
quickly
Howard-
and then, did you have a question or Alex? did you
Oh.
have a-
Howard
And
has.
Howard.
Is gonna review everything.
No, I just think it
to.
is so far beyond the role of the community board to check for the specs on any application. When we have a ULURP, we don't do the engineering check on the building. When we have a liquor license, we don't look into the backgrounds of the individuals applying. The community board, almost by definition, has to rely on the vetting done by the city. We should just be signing off on it from our community's perspective. And it's all been said, and I think we're all in agreement, but I think there's no issue that we are not in a position to vet engineering applications and applications for outdoor seating, any of these applications.
You were much more articulate than I was.
Okay, okay,
Thank
so
you.
So
That's great.
that's great. We can move on.
Let's
Yep.
move on to Howard's, Plastic Bollard resolution.
Oh, this is a pet peeve, and mercifully, this is a lot simpler. I'm sure everyone in this room has seen these dirty white obstructions lying horizontally on the street. They, I don't know what
One of them on the east
percentage
side.
of the white flexible bollards seem to vertical, but it seems pretty high. Just by way of background for the people less familiar, the idea was to separate traffic on city streets, mostly for separating protected bike lanes from vehicular traffic. And so the city primarily uses these what should be vertical flexible bollards. They seem to be white plastic with some reflective material on them. I haven't seen them in other cities. And what happens is they're flexible. And when cars and trucks hit them, eventually the majority of the base gives way, and so they go horizontal. They go flat on the ground, still attached to their base at one small part, and so they don't move around. And I've seen numerous pedestrians trip on them. If you go over them on a bike, you significantly run the risk of falling off the bike hurting yourself and anyone within a few feet of you. They're also totally unsightly. And last but not least, I don't think they're particularly effective because they're so flexible that cars and trucks seem to go right over them. So I think we should do what other cities do, is have something that's more durable that would actually force traffic to go where it's supposed to go, and to not be unsightly, and most importantly, not pose a safety risk to pedestrians and bikers.
Absolutely. I know so many people that have tripped over these things, including my sister, Andrew.
I don't know if this is the reason, but just coincidentally, in the past 2 weeks, I've seen twice NYPD go flying over them. Basically, I guess to get around traffic, or I don't know, but on Broadway, in the hundreds.
I think that they're flexible for emergency vehicles,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. Yeah.
That's a
we have
good
any-
point, though. I was gonna ask if there are any safety concerns with replacing them with
Well,
rigid
I mean, even
bollards, if cars
even
have
outside of
to
New York City.
avoid pedestrians or.
outside of New York City, I don't know, the news 2 weeks ago in New Orleans was all about the bollards, right? And the fact that they were, I guess, they weren't plastic bollards, right? They were.
They just didn't have anything on the
Right.
side.
No,
Right, they didn't have
it.
it, it was a construction issue, yeah. Anyway, but yes, that's a very good point that you're making, so.
I just
Yeah,
wanted
at the
to,
risk, can I just say one more thing? I always say this at least twice in each meeting, so here's my second time. We pay high taxes to have experts work for the city. I don't know what the answer is. And with all due respect to the people in the room, I don't think anyone in this room has a definitive answer. I just think it's our job to identify problems and express to the DOT what we'd like to see, which we think would be safer. Do I have again, I don't have a definitive answer to this. I know the white flexible bollards are not the answer. And I'd like to see the DOT come back to us with some better proposal.
Understood. I mean, Sofia, just by way of background, she's spent her career focused on a lot of these issues, so she does know sort of that data point that she used about the first responders and the ambulances, I think is a worthwhile point to make.
Yeah.
So Doug, on to you.
sure, are we, so I just want to be clear, because we're not talking about Jersey barriers, right? We're talking about, we're calling them bollards. I wish we had a photograph of them. Are we talking about the strips, the vertical strips that are narrow and tall?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so one of the things that I've noticed where they are helpful, not if they fall down, is on the bike lanes, right, where the raised cement is. If they're not there, when a car is making a turn, they sometimes go right over the cement. It's a visual indicator that there's something there. Because like right on 90th in Amsterdam, when those bollards were not there, if we're talking about the same thing, cars would go over that and they would bottom out. And I would see them knocked down and then they would be replaced. So are we talking about the strips? I mean, Alex just showed me a picture.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that they shouldn't be when they're the flexible. Yeah.
They should be permanent and.
Yeah. Or they should be more rigid than the current ones. I'm not saying that they have to be. I was in Paris recently and there were iron posts. I'm not saying we need iron posts, but they should, the main point for the resolution is they should not be something so vulnerable that so many of them fall flat on the ground, tripping pedestrians and bikers.
Right.
That's the point.
I think that's worded well, Howard, where you say durable posts to separate street traffic. So
Right.
Durable posts. Okay. So
Yeah, I have on my phone a picture of a bus pulling into a bus stop and just running right into the post, which is a goner. So I would just propose a friendly amendment to the resolution. There are other things besides posts that can be used. There is something, Colleen's probably familiar with this, called an armadillo that is used at Union Square East.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, you probably have one at home as a pet, right?
I wish I did, Ken, but no, not really. But I've seen them. Yeah, they're effective.
Yeah, so they're like these, they actually look like the top of an armadillo
Yeah.
and they, and, yeah, they're very effective at keeping,
So
Cars-
Howard,
cars
would
out.
you be comfortable with changing the word post to mean, like maybe something like means, durable means or durable?
Absolutely, totally. It was just an oversight on my part.
and also I took a trip, a guided tour in Jersey City a couple of years ago, and they had really strong posts, much better than what we have. And I don't know what Jersey City uses, but we asked them and they gave some name and I don't know, Durapost or something like that, but
Okay.
DOT might want to ask Jersey City what they're using.
So I think, I mean, does somebody want to call the question on
Yeah,
that?
I think with
With Howard's resolution, with that friendly,
friendly amendment, let's call the question.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Eleven. Oh, you were saying, sorry, 10 to 0 to
Abstaining,
1 to 0, sorry about that.
don't know enough about. the
And
ramifications.
non-committee?
4.
You're 4, okay, 1 to 0 to 0 to 0, okay, resolution passes. Thanks, Howard.
Thanks, Howard.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thanks.
now the moment we've all been waiting for.
Uh,
I was remiss at the beginning of this meeting, and I know we all have mixed opinions on congestion pricing, but I do want to acknowledge Andrew for his work, not only just getting it over the finish line and seeing the first week of implementation this
And that's
week.
without a vote.
I know, and I think we're gonna devote more time to discussion of MTA things. Obviously, this is an important week for the MTA and
And-
turn it over to you.
And it's going to mean various discussions on various repercussions that occur as a result of this. Obviously, there's going to be more talk about residential parking permits. I'm sure that's coming. And other things that congestion pricing. But in the first week, and it's early, obviously, but in the first week, vehicles entering the congestion zone are down by 7.5%, which is something, and that's even if it was a holiday week partly and some bad weather days, but that's not bad. River crossings have had a 30 to 40% shorter travel times. That's amazing. The Holland Tunnel had a 65% shorter travel time. The Manhattan Bridge only had a 10% shorter travel time, so obviously that one still is pretty busy. More than 200,000 fewer cars on the roads in the congestion zone. That's major, I think, and that certainly adds to the air quality and your ability to move and get emergency vehicles going. Crosstown streets have been much clearer, much fewer. Bus speeds have gone up 20 to 30% on crosstown buses, with the exception of 57th Street crosstown, but the others are up much faster. So that's great. There's less, traffic that didn't have to be there. Subway and bus ridership is up. The average is now 3.6 to 3.7 million subway riders a day, which is great. We have had some over 4 million days, but that preceded congestion pricing, interestingly. So we'll see how that goes. Subway rider, Metro North and Long Island Railroad ridership is also way up. That's a great sign. There's also been some really special deals that the railroads have done, like they've done in the summer. They have a summer bonus ticket where you can bring 1 or 2 additional people on for $1 each if you have a monthly ticket. They're doing that in the winter now, which is also increasing ridership on the commuter rails. That's great. My council has a proposal, and we send it to the governor, and we hope that the MTA will take it up seriously to have something. If you buy a weekly Omni in the boroughs on the railroads, you get a free transfer to subways and buses. So your railroad, your subway, and your bus would all be taken care of. There would really be no reason to drive. We think that would be major. Many of the neighborhoods in the boroughs are far from subways, but they have commuter trains running through them, and they're priced out of their reach in a lot of cases. We did get city ticket put in, which has helped, a $2.75 or a $5 fee But having the weekly Omni and your free transfer to the subway and bus, we think would be great and would really build ridership. Now, express buses that use the tunnels from Jersey, some of them from Staten Island, and some of them from Brooklyn and Queens that use the East River have really sped up. Much quicker trips for those that have come in over the bridges or through the tunnels from Jersey. There are some Staten Island buses that do use the Lincoln Tunnel. So obviously the first week is not the be all and end all, but the numbers are looking good. And I'm optimistic that when people get used to this and hopefully the sociopath doesn't kill it on day one, that we will be able to proceed with this and adjust it to where it's better. Some people have pointed out that residents of the congestion zone in London get a discount. That has not happened in Manhattan south of 60th Street. There are people talking about that. I believe there should be a dedicated route, and I've told this to the TMRB and others, and nothing has happened yet. But if you're going on the West Side Highway and your destination is the Lincoln Tunnel, if there was a defined route with the readers that measures your Easy Pass and your license plate, and you went right on that route into the tunnel and didn't further ingest the congestion zone, that you wouldn't get the congestion fee. And I think the same thing from the Battery Tunnel to the Holland Tunnel. If you stayed on West Street and went right into that, that would be a good thing too. Anything to make this more palatable and easier. And I do notice, Andrew, and you probably know this better than I do, but apparently there's a lot more truck deliveries in the evening now because they are so much lower rates to do that.
Well, I mean, yeah, for restaurants it's a little bit different. There's some challenges.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we have seen is that almost all suppliers to restaurants on their business have either increased their prices or done surcharges. I mean, I'm getting text of, this vendor surcharge. So I mean, it's the one thing that everyone was concerned about. So I know everybody was saying that the trucks are gonna get around faster now, so they should be able to reduce their prices.
I hope that you're gonna check
Yeah.
that when people tell you this about the surcharge, just out of curiosity, ask them, are you getting night deliveries or day deliveries, and see if the surcharge matches the fee that's changed.
Well, it's very hard because depending on the truck that comes in, the number of deliveries, how do they allocate it? So I mean, I think some companies are gonna end up making money, if they're adding if beer, is adding $5 for every keg now, or your beer delivery, and they're dropping off, to 10 different bars, well, that's a lot more.
But technically, if they're able to make deliveries more easily and more quickly because there's less congestion on the streets.
I know that's what the report said. I'm just saying that, it's a great reason to increase prices, not to decrease prices.
Just one quick thing, also that you may not have mentioned about Second Avenue, that there's now, I guess they've rolled out some.
Oh, well, because of the money that has started to come in from congestion pricing, the MTA has rebirthed the Second Avenue subway, and work is proceeding to go up to 125th and Park Avenue.
Wow.
And hundreds of electric buses have now been purchased for the Jamaica Bus Depot, which is largely going to be for Queens and some Brooklyn buses. But if you live in the vicinity of a bus depot, you're going to see a major difference in the air quality with electric buses and chargers rather than diesel buses or even hybrid buses. So they have started those two things. There are many other things. CBTC on the Fulton Street A and C line in Brooklyn, and on the BD, F, and M lines on 6th Avenue in Manhattan. That one is really important because we have CBTC on Queens Boulevard East and Queens Boulevard West, and the Culver line in Brooklyn, all of which the F line uses. But when it comes to mid-Manhattan, there is no CBTC, and they catch up with the other trains, and it's worthless. So you need it on the entire line, and that's going to happen now with congestion pricing. So there's many other projects, resiliency on the Hudson line and Metro North, possible electrification of some Long Island Railroad lines, purchases of hundreds of new subway cars and commuter rail vehicles, many of which are breaking down and causing ridiculous calamities. And just one little last piece of information. The last 2 weekends, you may have noticed there has been no train service on Central Park West because they have been replacing a really ancient switch at 59th Street, Columbus Circle. That is now finished. You should see much smoother riding, much easier transfers between the 6th and 8th Avenue lines, and much more easily passing through 59th Street on the A, B, C, and D lines. So that's great news.
Can I ask
And
one-
more important replacements of important age. We have such ancient, the substation that exploded in downtown Brooklyn that caused that ridiculous F line. We don't want that to keep happening, and we need this kind of capital dollars.
Jay, and then Andrew.
Apropos to your comment about accessing the Lincoln Tunnel, and I've spoken to you about this in the past, coming in the other direction through the Lincoln Tunnel. If you want to come through the Lincoln Tunnel, go around on 42nd or 41st Street and go up the west side, you're still stuck with the fee.
You are.
So
So what I was referring to
It's
was
both
for both
ways?
directions, yes.
Both
Yeah, it makes, because you're not looking to clog the congestion, so
No.
you're looking to leave, actually.
yeah, so if there's a prescribed route and you adhere to it,
If you
you
adhere to
shouldn't
it.
have to pay.
I
So wait,
agree.
so
Right.
so if you're coming in from Jersey through the tunnel and you go in and you kind of at, 42nd Street, just to go back on the West Side Highway to go.
You pay
north
the
or
fee.
south.
Yeah, you
You
can.
pay
And in
the fee
reverse
now.
too,
Absolutely.
Which is
which
crazy.
we brought up.
I think
Yeah.
they'll fix it.
And by the way, the word you were looking for is resurrected.
Yes, resurrected, and you do get a discount, you do get a
You
discount,
resurrected it.
obviously, for tolls paid on MTA bridges and tunnels or Port Authority bridges and tunnels. So it's not the clear $9. If you just pay a $6 toll, it's $3.
I didn't realize, so you can't get into Manhattan that way
Without paying a fee.
so I
Can't
have to
leave
bring,
either.
I have to drop my wife off at the airport in Jersey. When I guess you pay it once a day, but so when I go in or when I leave, I pay
You using the Lincoln Tunnel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go all the way up.
to GW.
FDR is free, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
FDR is free and the West Side Highway is free, yeah.
Yeah, but you can't get to, you have to pull in. You have to
Yeah,
go-
you have to go
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
city street.
Yeah, by Javits, right?
Well,
you
we-
gotta go.
Somebody, when we did that walk with the elected officials across 60th Street,
Mhm.
I personally asked that question and we've brought it up, and the MTA told us at the time, because of the hardware and the software, they can't make the exception, which really, honestly, I never accepted that answer. And the other issue, I mean, just seems counterintuitive,
You
right?
can get charged
You're-
and then be given a credit, so.
Well, sure, and I mean, so obviously the intention of the driver, and I'm repeating it, but it is absurd, in my opinion, that if you are never intending to get into the zone, but your destination is Jersey, or you're coming from Jersey and your destination is north or south, why you're getting dinged because you put your toes into Manhattan, because there's no other way around it. It seems counterintuitive. And the other problem, because, and we're north of the zone, it's going to encourage people to get off on the GW because they don't want to pay the fee down. And then so I hope they fix that. They are well aware of it. We've brought it up. And I just think it's a real contradiction. And the other thing that I always found strange, and I'm not a proponent of it, but like, the various congestion fees, which are hard to keep up with now, right? If you're in a taxi or a for hire vehicle, we had the below 96th Street fee, right? So if you enter into or are already in below 96, you get hit, right? But if you are below 60th already and you don't leave and you drive around all day, all night, polluting, doing whatever you want to do, no fee, not a penny.
No.
That seems counterintuitive to me, because if the idea is to reduce congestion in the zone, why is there no fee for riding around in the zone? It just doesn't.
And so if you're going from 100th Street, you go below 96th Street, you pay the first
Right away.
congestion. Then you go below 60th.
You pay the second time.
Pay another one,
And you may
75
have heard
cents.
that
Yeah.
Uber and now Lyft have both been putting the congestion fee on people who are actually getting into an apartment house on East 61st Street. And the MTA has corrected their maps and Uber has corrected it. And Lyft was sent the corrected map, yet for the last few days, Lyft has been charging people for going to 61st Street, not below 60th Street.
It would seem to me to encourage people, when you look at when you look at license plates within the zone, I mean, so much of the congestion is TLC.
Right.
And if you're trying to encourage people to take public transportation, particularly within the zone, you wouldn't have such a significantly lower fee that doesn't really so much disincentivize people
I mean,
from
most of the
taking.
people who are taking Ubers and Lyfts, it's elastic, like, it's like not gonna matter to them.
No, and they're just taking it constantly.
Yeah.
I,
From
Dollar-
one,
number
from their
$1.50
kids' school, like, it's.
Charge
like, yeah.
for Ubers and Lyfts at
Right.
75 cents for a yellow
Yeah.
taxi.
so it's just, I mean, clearly to raise money,
Yeah,
not
I
to
think-
reduce the
yeah.
congestion from the people who brought all the congestion in the first
Right.
place.
That's kind of my point.
That they're-
Well,
And then I think we have, did you wanna introduce
Oh,
yourself? or do you-
I'm sure. My name is Fred Sofa.
Uh-huh.
I go to the CV12 Upper Manhattan
Okay.
TNT subcommittee meetings. I actually applied to be a public member a year ago, and perhaps someday it'll be paid for, be an actual official member, but I act like I'm one anyway. And so, beyond, of course, kind of keeping my finger in the congestion pricing thing. My real point is, I would love to see the city of New York implement resident-only permit parking for various reasons. And so I've been doing some research, or reached out to Mr. Yaruss. And not that it will create a surplus of spots, that'll never happen. There's no political will for that. But I'd like to redistribute parking spots from non-residents to residents, since we're residents technically are paid for all the city streets. And begin the process of realizing that the city streets are a public good. It's a public value. It should not be used privately. Transiting on a street is great. You drive through. The next person can drive through. But as soon as you park, you're taking your private property and you're parking on what is a public good for free. So it shouldn't be free. It should at least be the external cost of that space. And once the mind space becomes that that's no longer free, then it'll just simply be maybe what it, in 20 years from now, what it actually costs, which is tremendous. Anyone would pay for a parking spot in front of their building more than they would pay for a garage, because it's in front of your building and you don't have to go to the garage and you don't have to tip. And you don't have to call and say, please get my vehicle. So that's my pet project for the next 10 years.
Stay tuned, stay tuned, and keep coming to our meetings.
Yes, and I'll just make one comment on Andrew's point. So as congestion pricing has started, the long game, because now I'm old, I don't think in long-term things, is that I'm so far left, I'm back to Milton Friedman. So every block, it's true, every block you pay. I just read Movement, which is the history of like transit in New York. And one point you made, which we all know, is that owning a car and being in a car is a status. It is an upgrade. For those people, especially that don't like the city, for me, I love the city, I want to take the subway, I meet people in my car, I never meet anyone. But for most people, you're isolated, the radio's on, it's beautiful, it's climate controlled. And so a lot of the resistance is people keeping a privilege. I'm a member of the press, I had a parking placard up until 2008 when they're all revoked. It was ironclad, I could park anywhere, anytime, no reason, no questions, no ticket, never. And there's thousands of those, so everyone that has their little status doesn't want to give it up. But that's not fair, and I still drive, I drove here, I got a miracle parking spot right in front, but that doesn't mean anything. What it means is
For
that I
free?
drove here. I live at 185th Street, I would have happily taken the A. Right, so because the streets are free, parking's free, I can park illegally with impunity because I have NYP plates in my neighborhood because there are no parking spots. That's my case. It's like George Soros not paying taxes and the secretary pays a higher rate. That doesn't mean that justice should not be done, that the streets, initially you could not park overnight in New York City until 1954 legally. The streets were for movement. Kids played in streets. And so now we're able to reconceptualize the city. Electric cars will start to remove pollution. Even in 1990, when I moved here, it was so much more polluted than it is now. And I saw pictures from the 20s, I'm like, it's foggy. It's like, no, it wasn't. That was coal from every building that had a coal burner. And so that's why the city's improving and improving and improving. And one thing is to take whatever we can grab, and if that's Milton Friedman, that you use, you pay for what you use. And if you pay, you drive, you should pay for every block. Why am I driving on the West Side Highway for free? So that's my mindset. And my goal is to start with permit parking, and obviously the congestion is way beyond me. Thank God those people that got it through. I know that New York legislature is chaos, and I'm a political science major, so I know how hard things are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we get to stop paying taxes?
I have an MTA question for you,
Okay.
Mike, real quick.
Real quick. and
This
then
is
we're
a
gonna-
safety, and so it's a really question for Andrew, if you know. When you're transferring from, let's say a 57th Street crosstown bus to, I'm just gonna say, the M57 to the 7 or the 11. Sometimes the stops are on the opposite side of the avenue to where the northbound bus is. I have seen, and it's also frustrating, you miss the bus because you see it coming, and I've also seen people taking chances and running across a red light because they want to get the bus. Does the MTA prioritize a closer transfer from one bus to another? Because 57th Street to 6 used to be there, they moved it, and they've never moved it back, and I've literally seen a dangerous condition because of it.
I've noticed the same thing you have. Some of the stops, you would expect the transfer would be on the side that the connecting bus would be on, and you wouldn't have to cross an avenue. They try to do that, but in all instances, they cannot do that for various reasons. Either it's loading zones or something else. The 86th Street crosstown, for instance.
Pretty good.
At Second Avenue, you know, it's on the far side of Second as opposed to the close side. I understand what you're saying. There's other factors.
Yeah, I think 57 and 6 was moved for construction and they never moved it back. That's what, but
And I'm
anyway, okay.
shocked With your philosophy.
So we are at 8:15, guys, unless there's any other business, like the
168 and
motion
the
to
one train
adjourn.
right out.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Right on the corner.
I know, my daughter.
Just for the record, okay, parking is no more free